The room was silent, but inside her mind a war was raging. Not because she was weak, not because she lacked confidence, but because she had spent years carrying the weight of toxic people who slowly convinced her she had to explain herself to deserve peace. Every sarcastic comment, every manipulation disguised as care, every backhanded compliment, every moment she shrank herself just to avoid conflict. It piled up. And maybe you know exactly what that feels like. Maybe you're exhausted from constantly defending your choices, explaining your boundaries, proving your worth to people who were never truly interested in understanding you in the first place. You smile while your energy collapses inside. You stay quiet to keep the peace. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to seem difficult. And slowly, without even noticing, you begin abandoning yourself. But listen carefully. There comes a moment in every powerful person's life when they realize something that changes everything. Not every battle deserves your energy. And the moment you stop reacting to every toxic person, the moment you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, the moment you stop begging for validation from emotionally immature people, your entire life changes. Because peace is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Boundaries are not cruelty. And walking away from chaos is not losing. It is evolving. Today, this is not just another motivational speech. This is your reminder that you were never meant to spend your life emotionally babysitting people who drain your spirit. And over the next few minutes, you're going to learn 5 powerful mindset shifts that emotionally strong people use to ignore toxic people without guilt, without anger, and without losing themselves in the process. Because the truth is, the strongest woman in the room is not always the loudest one. Sometimes she's the one who no longer reacts. Sometimes she's the one who learned how to protect her peace like her life depends on it. And maybe, after today, that woman will be you. There is something incredibly dangerous about a person who has mastered emotional control. Not because they manipulate, not because they dominate, but because toxic people can no longer control them. See, toxic people survive on reaction. They want your anger, your frustration, your tears, your explanations, your emotional energy. That is their fuel. Have you ever noticed how some people seem disappointed when you stay calm? You would think peace would calm them down, but no, because your calmness exposes their chaos. When someone insults you and you immediately react, they feel powerful. When someone provokes you and you lose your composure, they feel in control. But when you remain grounded, when you refuse to engage, when you respond with silence instead of emotional chaos, the power shifts instantly, and that shift terrifies people who depend on drama to feel significant. A woman once shared a story with me about her relationship. For years, every disagreement turned into emotional warfare. Her partner would twist her words, provoke arguments, raise his voice, then accuse her of being too emotional when she reacted. And for the longest time, she kept trying to explain herself. She kept trying to prove her intentions, defend her heart, convince him to understand her. Until one day, she stopped. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally realized peace mattered more than winning arguments. The next time he tried to pull her into chaos, she simply looked at him calmly and said, "I'm not doing this anymore." No screaming, no dramatic exit, no emotional explosion, just stillness. And do you know what happened? For the first time, he lost control. Because toxic people don't know what to do with someone who refuses to play their game. That is the power of silence. Silence is not passive. Silence is disciplined power. It says, I value my energy too much to waste it here. And once you understand that, your entire life changes. Think about social media for a moment. Someone leaves a hateful comment under your post, a sarcastic remark, a passive-aggressive insult. Most people instantly feel the urge to respond, to defend themselves, correct the misunderstanding, win the argument. But emotionally intelligent people understand something deeper. Not every opinion deserves access to your nervous system. Sometimes deleting the comment without emotion is power. Sometimes ignoring it completely is power. Sometimes smiling and continuing your life is power. Because your peace is more valuable than your pride. And that lesson becomes even more important inside families. Sometimes the most toxic people are not strangers. Sometimes they're relatives. People who constantly criticize your appearance, your career, your relationships, your choices. People who disguise disrespect as honesty. Oh, you've changed. You think you're too good now. You're too sensitive. You used to be nicer. What they really mean is, you stopped tolerating behavior that benefited me. And the moment you understand that, guilt begins to disappear. Because growth always offends people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Read that again in your soul. Growth offends people who benefited from your silence. That's why emotionally mature people stop over-explaining themselves. They realize something powerful. People who truly respect you do not require endless explanations to honor your boundaries. And people committed to misunderstanding you will twist every explanation anyway. So stop exhausting yourself trying to be understood by people determined to misinterpret you. Your peace is sacred. Protect it. The first powerful shift in ignoring toxic people is this: stop taking the bait. Toxic people are emotional fishermen. They throw out hooks constantly. Sarcasm, criticism, manipulation, victim mentality, passive-aggressive comments, guilt trips. And they keep testing until they find the hook that still controls you emotionally. The moment you react impulsively, they win. Not because they're right, but because they successfully entered your emotional space. Strong people understand that emotional discipline is a superpower. They pause before reacting. They observe instead of exploding. They ask themselves, does this situation deserve my peace? And most of the time, the answer is no. A woman working in a corporate office once dealt with a toxic coworker who constantly tried humiliating her during meetings. Every suggestion she made got mocked. Every success was minimized. Every mistake was highlighted publicly. At first, she fought back emotionally. She defended herself aggressively, argued constantly, went home emotionally exhausted every night. Until one day she changed her strategy. Instead of reacting emotionally, she became emotionally detached and professionally excellent. When criticized, she stayed calm. When interrupted, she remained composed. When mocked, she responded with facts instead of feelings. And slowly, something unexpected happened. People began noticing who the real problem was. Because composure exposes immaturity. The toxic coworker lost power the moment emotional chaos stopped working. That is what happens when you stop taking the bait. The illusion of their control collapses. And this applies to relationships too. Sometimes toxic partners provoke you intentionally because your emotional reaction reassures them they still control your emotions. But the day you learn to pause, breathe, and emotionally detach, you become untouchable. Not cold, not heartless, just grounded. And grounded people are very difficult to manipulate. The second shift is learning how to build boundaries without guilt. Many people think boundaries are rude, but boundaries are not punishment. They are self-respect in action. A boundary simply says, "This behavior is no longer welcome in my life." That's it. Healthy people respect boundaries. Toxic people resent them. And that alone tells you everything you need to know. One woman used to leave every family gathering emotionally drained. Relatives mocked her choices constantly. They criticized her appearance, compared her to others, dismissed her dreams. Yet she kept attending because she didn't want to disappoint anyone. Until eventually she realized something devastating. She was sacrificing her mental health to maintain fake harmony. So she made a decision. She stopped attending environments that consistently disrespected her peace. And yes, people got angry. They called her selfish, dramatic, sensitive. But over time, something beautiful happened. She became happier, lighter, more confident, more emotionally stable. Because boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They are filters that keep disrespect out. And if someone becomes furious when you create healthy boundaries, it usually means they benefited from your lack of them. That truth changes lives. Boundaries also exist in friendships. Some friendships survive only because one person constantly overextends themselves emotionally. You listen endlessly, support endlessly, give endlessly. But when you need support, silence. And eventually you realize the friendship was never mutual. It was emotional dependence disguised as connection. Strong people eventually learn to ask, does this relationship nourish me or drain me? And if the answer is drain, they stop over-investing emotionally. Not with anger, with wisdom. Because your emotional energy is expensive. Stop giving it away for free. The third shift is protecting your energy instead of proving yourself. This is where real transformation begins. See, toxic people want you distracted. Distracted defending yourself, distracted explaining yourself, distracted reacting emotionally. Because distracted people stop growing, and growth is threatening to insecure people. A woman after a painful breakup had every reason to become bitter. She was betrayed, manipulated, discarded. She wanted revenge, closure, validation. But instead of spending months obsessing over the person who hurt her, she redirected that pain into rebuilding herself. She started exercising consistently, reading books, healing emotionally, starting new goals, rebuilding her confidence. And within months, she looked completely different. Not just physically, energetically. Her pain became fuel. That is power. Because the greatest revenge is not making someone regret losing you. The greatest revenge is becoming someone who no longer needs their validation to feel worthy. And that changes everything. Imagine how much energy people waste obsessing over toxic individuals, replaying conversations, imagining arguments, seeking closure from emotionally unavailable people. Meanwhile, their dreams sit abandoned, their goals delayed, their purpose ignored. What if you redirected all that emotional energy into your evolution? What if every time someone hurt you, you became stronger instead of more bitter? That is emotional alchemy, turning pain into power, turning rejection into redirection, turning heartbreak into transformation. Toxic people expect you to collapse. They never expect you to rise. And nothing confuses toxic people more than someone who heals without revenge. The fourth shift is practicing emotional detachment. Now listen carefully because people misunderstand detachment all the time. Detachment is not becoming emotionless. It is learning not to emotionally drown in things you cannot control. It is understanding that other people's opinions are not your identity. It is refusing to hand strangers the authority to define your worth. Detached people still care. They just stop attaching their self-worth to external validation. If someone misunderstands them, they stay grounded. If someone dislikes them, they stay grounded. If someone talks behind their back, they stay grounded. Because mature people understand you cannot control how others perceive you. You can only control how deeply you internalize it. One of the most freeing moments in life is realizing that not everyone has to like you for your life to be meaningful. That realization changes everything. A woman once shared that she spent years trying to make everyone comfortable around her. She toned down her personality, minimized her success, apologized for taking up space, and still, people criticized her. Eventually, she realized something heartbreaking. No matter how much she shrank herself, insecure people would always find something to dislike. So she stopped shrinking. She stopped apologizing for existing loudly. And for the first time in her life, she felt free. Because confidence is not convincing everyone to love you. Confidence is being okay when they don't. That is emotional freedom. And emotionally free people are dangerous in the best possible way. Because manipulation stops working on them. Guilt stops working on them. Fear stops working on them. They become anchored within themselves. The fifth and most powerful shift is this: stop explaining your worth. You do not need a courtroom presentation to justify your boundaries. You do not need to write emotional essays explaining why you walked away from disrespect. You do not need permission to protect your peace. And you definitely do not need approval to evolve. People who truly value you will not require endless explanations to respect you. And people committed to misunderstanding you will twist every explanation anyway. So stop shrinking your truth to make others comfortable. You were not born to live emotionally exhausted just so other people can avoid accountability. You were not born to constantly prove your value to emotionally unavailable people. You were not born to abandon yourself in order to keep toxic people comfortable. You were born to grow, to evolve, to rise. And the moment you finally believe that, your energy changes completely. A confident person does not walk into every room demanding validation. They walk in already knowing their worth. Like a diamond does not explain why it shines. It simply shines. That is your lesson. Stop explaining your light to people committed to living in darkness. Let them misunderstand you. Let them gossip. Let them project. Let them judge. Your job is not to control their perception. Your job is to protect your peace and continue evolving. Because eventually, something incredible happens. The opinions that once destroyed your confidence stop reaching your soul. Their words still exist, but they no longer live inside you, and that is true healing. A healed person is not someone who never gets hurt. A healed person is someone who no longer abandons themselves when hurt. That is the difference. So if you are listening to this today while carrying emotional exhaustion from toxic people, hear this clearly. You are allowed to walk away from disrespect. You are allowed to stop over-explaining yourself. You are allowed to choose peace over performance. You are allowed to protect your energy without guilt. You are allowed to outgrow people. And you are absolutely allowed to become unavailable for chaos. Because your energy is sacred. Your mind is sacred. Your peace is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. One day, the same people who called you too sensitive will realize you simply stopped tolerating disrespect. The same people who called you changed will realize you finally healed. The same people who mocked your boundaries will realize they can no longer control you. And by then, you won't even need their validation anymore. Because the moment you stop begging people to see your worth is the moment you finally begin seeing it yourself. And that is where your real power begins.